Ever get that feeling? Like you're in a room and it's full of voices all
Mm.
swirling around you.
Mhm.
Some are loud, some are quiet, but they all represent, relationships.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then there are those voices that just kind of disappear,
Right.
leaving this weird silence.
Like a void.
Yeah, a
It's a
void.
powerful image.
That's what we're diving into today. Ghosting.
Oh, interesting.
We've got tons of articles, research, even a personal story
Oh, wow.
to figure out why people ghost and what it does to everyone involved.
I think a lot of people have experienced that, haven't they? That feeling of just being completely cut off.
Yeah, and it's more than just, oh, they stopped talking to me. It really messes with you.
Absolutely. It's like this huge emotional ripple effect.
Exactly. You start questioning yourself, your worth, everything.
You overthink every interaction, every word.
And it can even make you afraid of future relationships.
Right, because you're constantly wondering, are they going to disappear too?
Like, our brains are wired to need closure.
Yeah, we crave explanations.
When we don't get them, we make up our own, which can be worse.
Oh, definitely. Much worse sometimes.
There's a story in our research about a guy named Chris.
Okay.
He was talking to this woman, Emma, online.
Mm-hmm.
Things were going great. Then, poof,
Gone.
she ghosted him.
Wow, just like that.
No explanation, nothing. Left him totally confused.
Checking his phone constantly.
Yeah. Torturing himself.
That's rough. You really feel for him in the story.
It shows how emotionally devastating ghosting can be.
Psychologically, it's like a punch to the gut. You feel abandoned, rejected.
But without actually being rejected.
Which makes it so much harder to process. You're just left in limbo.
Well, Chris is trying to figure out what happened to Emma. Our source material also gives us a look at Emma's side.
Oh, that's interesting. So we see why she ghosted.
Yeah, and it's not as simple as you might think.
What was it?
Well, she did like Chris.
Okay.
But she started getting really anxious.
About the relationship.
Exactly. She thought ghosting would be less hurtful than talking about it.
Avoiding that difficult conversation.
So it's not always about being mean. Sometimes it's about fear.
Fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection.
They're both wanting connection, but terrified of what might happen.
Yeah, it's like a silent battle between their desires and fears.
And even though ghosting might feel easier in the moment, it often leads to more pain for everyone.
One of the sources talks about avoidant attachment style.
What's that?
It's basically this tendency to pull away from close relationships.
To protect yourself.
Exactly. Often it stems from childhood experiences.
So it's not just about being a bad communicator. There can be deeper issues.
It's definitely more complex than it seems on the surface.
And then you add in technology.
Oh, yeah. The digital age has changed things, hasn't it?
It's so easy to disconnect online.
A swipe, a block, and poof, you're gone.
Like you said, it creates this detachment from the consequences.
We've almost become numb to it because it's so common online.
It's crazy. We can connect with more people than ever before.
But we're also more disconnected than ever.
Totally.
Hmm.
But it's not just technology at play here.
Right.
Our sources suggest that how we're raised also influences our communication style.
Like if you grow up in a family where emotions weren't discussed openly,
Or conflict was avoided.
you might be more likely to ghost as an adult.
Because it feels familiar.
Right. It becomes a coping mechanism, even if it's not healthy.
This makes me think about emotional literacy. Being able to understand and express your feelings.
Absolutely. It's a crucial skill.
And if you never learned it, it's no surprise you might resort to ghosting.
One of the sources actually highlights emotional literacy as a key factor in reducing ghosting.
So we've got technology, fear of vulnerability, and societal norms all contributing to this.
It's like ghosting is just a symptom of a much bigger problem.
A societal struggle with being honest and connecting authentically.
And the consequences go way beyond just feeling hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources talk about how ghosting can have lasting impacts on mental well-being.
Making people less trusting in future relationships.
It creates this ripple effect of anxiety and self-doubt.
One study even linked ghosting to increased feelings of loneliness.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Humans are social creatures.
We need connection.
When you're ghosted, it's like being rejected by the whole social fabric.
So it's not just about one person, it's about feeling disconnected from everything.
It's really important to acknowledge the depth of that emotional pain.
Absolutely. So we've seen how ghosting can trigger all sorts of complex emotional and psychological responses.
It's definitely not as simple as it seems.
But before we jump into the ghoster's perspective and the possibility of making things right, let's pause here.
Okay.
Take a moment to think about what we've discussed.
This is heavy stuff.
We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into ghosting.
It's tough, right? To be left with that uncertainty.
Yeah, it's like that feeling when you walk into a room and everyone goes silent
Oh, yeah.
and stares at you.
You just want to disappear.
Exactly. But with ghosting, that feeling just sticks with you
It can linger for so long.
because you're constantly wondering what went wrong.
You have no closure.
So you end up blaming yourself,
Going over every little detail,
trying to find an answer that's just not there.
like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah, you can kind of see the picture, but it's never complete.
One of our sources even compared it to grieving.
Really.
Like you've lost someone.
Even though they're not actually gone.
The emotional impact can be that intense.
Which makes me wonder about the ghoster.
Hmm.
Do they just walk away feeling fine?
Not really. It might seem that way. Our sources suggest they often feel guilty.
Really?
Yeah, even ashamed.
Wow, I guess that makes sense.
They might even have anxiety about it.
So they're not escaping the emotional fallout after all?
One article called it a moral hangover.
That's a good way to put it.
It could affect their future relationships, too.
Like they're carrying this baggage with them?
One source even suggested ghosting can be a form of self-sabotage
How so?
by avoiding these tough conversations.
They're preventing themselves from forming real connections.
It's like they're building walls instead of bridges.
So if it comes down to this fear of being vulnerable, how do we break out of that cycle?
Well, a lot of our sources talked about emotional literacy,
Right, we touched on that earlier.
learning to understand and express your emotions in a healthy way.
Instead of shutting down or disappearing,
You have to be honest with yourself first.
about your own needs and boundaries.
Yeah, sometimes we ghost because we don't even know what we want.
So it's about having those tough conversations with yourself first.
Exactly. Then you can start communicating them to others.
But what if ghosting has already happened? That's a tough one.
Can you ever really fix that damage?
One of our sources talked about making amends.
Is that even possible?
It's complicated, but it can be.
What does it take?
It takes real remorse, a willingness to take responsibility for the hurt you caused.
And a lot of sensitivity.
You can't just expect everything to go back to normal.
Right, it's not about a quick apology text. It's about acknowledging the impact of your actions.
And understanding that the other person needs time to heal.
One source even said to think of it as self-accountability.
Not about seeking forgiveness.
It's about owning your part and showing you want to do better.
That's a good way to approach it.
It shifts the focus from fixing the situation to personal growth.
That's really insightful.
Another interesting point was this idea of reframing the experience.
Like turning a negative into a positive.
Instead of focusing on the loss,
You can see it as an opportunity.
to learn more about yourself.
Your needs, your patterns.
Exactly. What can I learn from this? What red flags did I miss?
That reminds me of the tapestry metaphor.
Oh yeah, the threads of light.
When one thread breaks, it creates a gap.
But you can reweave it, make the tapestry even stronger.
Add new threads, new colors.
Ghosting can be a catalyst for growth.
If you approach it the right way.
You can reassess your relationships, communicate better.
Build something even more beautiful.
It's about taking control and creating a tapestry that truly reflects who you are.
Wow, that's a powerful image. Okay, so we've talked about how messy ghosting can be.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
But how do we actually fix this?
Well, our sources all point to one big thing.
What's that?
Good old-fashioned communication.
Easier said than done, right?
It can be tough, but it's crucial.
But we've been talking about all this fear.
Fear of vulnerability, rejection.
How do you push past that and actually be honest?
One source talked about assertive vulnerability.
What's that exactly?
It's like finding a balance.
Between being honest and respectful.
Exactly. You express your feelings, but you don't overwhelm the other person.
So it's not about dumping everything on them.
Right. It's more like, hey, I've enjoyed getting to know you, but I'm not feeling a romantic connection.
Oh, I see. So you're being direct but kind.
Exactly. Or like, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. Can we talk later?
That makes sense. Even a simple message acknowledging someone can make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Like, hey, I got your message. I'll get back to you soon.
It shows you're not ignoring them.
It's about respecting their time and feelings.
Okay, so what if you're the one who got ghosted?
That's rough.
How do you deal with that hurt and move on?
Self-compassion is key.
Yeah, it's so easy to blame yourself.
But remember, it's not about you.
It's about their inability to communicate.
Everyone has their own baggage.
And sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away.
Surround yourself with people who value you.
Focus on those positive connections.
It's like tending to your own emotional garden.
Pull out the weeds, nurture the flowers.
One source suggested a relationship inventory.
Oh, what's that?
Taking stock of your past relationships.
What worked, what didn't,
What red flags you missed.
to help you make better choices in the future.
Exactly. As you become more self-aware, you can set healthier boundaries,
Like being more selective about who you let in.
communicating your expectations clearly.
And knowing when to walk away.
You deserve to be treated with respect.
Your emotional well-being matters.
And remember that tapestry we talked about?
Yeah, the threads of our relationships.
As you heal and communicate better,
You can create an even stronger tapestry.
filled with vibrant, healthy connections.
It's like we're the artists of our own lives.
Choosing the colors, the patterns.
Creating a masterpiece of meaningful relationships.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So remember, you have the power to choose how you connect.
And how you let others treat you.
Don't settle for silence. Demand honesty. Build relationships that truly nourish your soul.
That's such an important message. This has been a really insightful deep dive into ghosting.
It's definitely a complex topic.
But I think we've shed some light on why it happens.
And how to create healthier connections.
So thanks for joining us on this journey. Keep those conversations flowing, keep connecting, and keep creating those beautiful tapestries of relationships.